Ever since Natlan was released, there has been controversy after controversy and so much unnecessary hate. I am by no means a Hoyo meat writer, and I know Genshin has its glaring problems. However, a lot of complaints about Natlan are coming from misinformation or lack of wanting to acquire knowledge. It's simply complaining without knowing what they're talking about, which is classic and long standing within the Genshin community, which is why I honestly feel that the hate in Natlan is forced. I got the idea of making this video after having a conversation with a buddy of mine regarding whether or not Natlan was actually the nation of war, like comparatively to Inazuma, where a lot of the story quests centered around a civil war. But to his credit, he doesn't really give a damn about the story of Genshin, which I can understand. Not all of it is interesting, and the dialogue goes on for what feels like an eternity. That said, I'm going to cover reasons that people wrongfully hate Natlan, as well as a few controversies that have popped up since its release. So, why do people hate Natlan? Since the release of 5.0, there's been nothing but a constant uproar regarding its influences, accusations of exclusion, and why in the world the Pyro Archon has a motorcycle. Personally, when I saw it, I was incredibly hyped because who wouldn't want to drive a motorcycle? Natlan didn't go over well, firstly, because the technology within the region in the hands of the tribal people clashed with the fantasy setting of the game. Despite there being an in-game explanation, Despite there being an in-game explanation as to why the tribal people of Natlan have such technology, the fans were far less receptive than intended. It's strange because I remember that there was nothing but hype for Natlan when the teaser trailer released, but when the characters started coming out, it was just downhill from there. First and foremost, the fans were very displeased with the lack of melanin in the playable characters in the lineup, and even went so far as to make a mod, which looked pretty fucking good, by the way, just so that they could place the melanin in the game. The fan base was incredibly divided on the matter, and it's safe to say that there were an equal amount of people who hated and loved Hoyo's designs. And honestly, I remember the same thing going on in Sumeru. It wasn't as bad as it is now in Natlan, but it was still pretty bad. Like, if you told me that Hoyo was scared to put darker skinned characters in the game, like for playable characters, I would believe you. I would definitely believe you. Right before patch 5.0 released, a voice actor strike occurred. This strike was the result of voice agencies attempting to use their voices to train AI. A lot of the actors were a part of Formosa, an agency that provided voice work for Genshin Impact since the very beginning. This isn't the first time that they've been in the hot seat either, given that the voice actor for Paimon had not been getting paid for their performances for months after they had contributed their vocal talents patch after patch. Thankfully, Hoyo fought tooth and nail to make sure that they had gotten paid in full for their services, but when the strike was announced, people were very quick to point fingers at Hoyo as if they were the ones in charge of making that decision. To the surprise of literally no one who did research, they were not responsible. For a long time, there were a bunch of misinformed fans perpetuating this misinformation, even though the truth started to come out. The voice actor strike affected more than just Genshin though, because but since Genshin is the main focus of this video, I won't go into too much detail. Thankfully, things are returning to normal as the voice actors are finding new studios that will protect their voices, and oh my god, just in time, because I do not know if I can go through another story quest or another cutscene without any fucking voices. Like, I didn't realize that the event that's up right now, the Real Adventure, where you have to edit the movies and shit, I didn't realize that was supposed to be voiced until like the very last one. That, you know how much that pisses me off? Oh my god. Now, I'm not really going to sugarcoat this next part because it's no secret that there were a lot of people who were vocal about the character designs of Natlan, with some saying that they mock the culture that they are inspired by, and others focus solely on the fact that the characters don't have darker skin tones. when I look around that land, I see NPCs that are really dark or have darker skin tones. But as mentioned earlier, the discrepancy wasn't with the NPCs; it was with the fact that the playable characters didn't have the skin tones that didn't reflect the region in which Natlan is based. To be clear, Natlan is inspired by pre-Columbian America, like the Olmec and Aztec cultures, which are part of ancient Latin cultures, and is also inspired by sub-Saharan Africa and islands located in Oceania such as Fiji and Samoa. With inspirations like that, despite what I said earlier about not caring, I'm kind of inclined to agree that the playable characters should be darker or have darker skin tones. We have a Yansan coming out soon from the collective of Plenty, and Shalonen, she's like a lighter skin tone, but it's not enough for the fan base. Like I personally like it, but it's not enough from the fan. It's not enough for the fan base. And as someone who has been playing Genshin since version 1.0, nothing really ever is, because you still have people asking Hoyo to make their limited events playable for newer characters. It is a limited event for a reason. Still, this particular hill is one worthy of dying on, because if you're going to have the influences of a certain culture, the people that are there, that are in that region that you're creating, should reflect that culture. You know, it's cool that they gave NPCs that treatment, but it's a little crazy not to do that to the playable characters. Again, I believe it would have been great to have the nation full of darker skinned folk. Like, that would be awesome. But let's be real. This is a Chinese company where the higher ups won't allow that for many reasons. And one of those main reasons is because their main focus is their home market, which is the Chinese market, and what appeals to the Chinese players. From my experience, the Chinese markets aren't too friendly to the kinfolk, unfortunately. Side note, I added this in like later into the development process for this video, but side note, I had heard that the devs wanted to put playable characters with darker skin tones in, but it was vetoed by the higher ups. This is a rumor. This is a rumor, so take it with a grain of salt. But shying away from just the skin tones, I will relent to the idea that Natlan's cast does look incredibly out of place for the game that they're in, but saying that they all have bad design simply because their region doesn't reflect their technological advancements is an okay argument. That's an okay argument to make. That's a pretty decent argument to make when you really sit and think about it. Because Fontaine did the same thing to me. But also, like Fontaine, I'm okay with it. It just really works for me. The land of Natlan is tribal, and I can honestly say that each character and their designs are reflective to their individual tribe's aesthetics or their own in some way or fashion. Like Kachina's drill being a part of her character design is very on brand for a tribe who specialize in treasure hunting and excavation and things of that nature. And it was made by Shalonen, who was responsible for making a lot of things throughout Natlan, including Marika's Flame Strider, that big ass motorcycle that everyone fucking hates. Shalonen's design has caused a lot of contention, like major contention, because a lot of people figure, why is she dressed like that if she's a blacksmith or an engineer? And I want to preface this by saying Shalonen's design was for marketing toward the male audience. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, at all. But why does she have a DJ set? Well, her tribe is also a very musical tribe. Their main musical aesthetic is hip-hop, which is front and center when we visit the stage for the first time in the Children of Echoes. They often have dance-off competitions complete with a booming sound system and a DJ controlling the music. Like, if you go on the stage behind the dancers, you'll see the NPC using the turntable. And in Shalonen's character story, she fixed the dance stage and took over as DJ for the remainder of the competition after everything had broken down. She fixed it. That's her thing. She has experience in the craft of everything that her character is rolled up into. It's her character, a roller skater, DJ, blacksmith. It all ties into her tribe. You can just not like something without making stuff up about it. Like that's possible. If you said that you don't like Shalonen's design because it's too perverted, it's too sexual. Okay, sure. Why not? Yeah, go ahead. Fine, whatever. But you can't say that everything on her, like everything that you see that she uses, is not a part of her character, but that doesn't tie into her tribe. Now, Kanish is a bit different to pin. He's like a bit difficult to pin, but his design isn't like bad. He's a Saurian hunter from the tribe that excels in extreme sports. Like the entire thing of Natlan is, of course, extreme sports. Like that's another big thing for them. And I think Kanish also reflects that. At first, I was at a loss for the 8-bit aesthetic, but I can only give thought to the fact that his entire aesthetic is centered around his bracelet, which isn't much to go on, but it would explain the 8-bit theme a bit more, since Ahau looks the way he does because from he's a projection of a pixelated sprite on Kanish's armband. Like his true form is trapped inside of it, of course. This is a bit of a cope, but bear with me. But like, just go with me. Just hang out. Just go with me. If I had to stand trial for Kanisha's design, I could tell you that West African traditional textiles look kind of pixelated. Given that one of Natlan's inspirations is West Africa, I can see this being the case. Still, I will go ahead and say that it is a bit odd and a bit jarring to see on his character, despite, the region that they're in. But like I said, Natlan is also inspired by West Africa, and you could honestly make the point that his clothes have traditional West African textile designs on them. It's a bit of a coat, but a case could be made for it. Now, Mualani's design is for sure in tune with her tribe, and I refuse to take any criticism on it outside of her skin, benefiting from being darker and her maracas being changed into ule ule. I get that Natlan is also inspired by ancient Latin civilizations, but it feels like they tried to mix and match inspirations a little too much. Still, maracas and ule ule are very similar to one another, so these changes are hills that I'm not willing to die on. I've seen people complain about Sharky and how Mualani would integrate into her tribe better if she just used a surfboard or a native Saurian. Honestly, the Saurian isn't a bad idea. Using the Kahola sword to get around is one of the ways that, if you didn't have a Natlan character, you could travel around the country with a Kahola sword. But the whole point of ancient name holders is standing out from the tribe. Still, this argument falls apart when you realize that Sharky is a surfboard. Mualani uses her pet freshwater shark as a surfboard. So I don't really understand how much more she can integrate into her tribe. Malika's design hate is directed at her biker suit. The coochie zipper, the biker aesthetic, the disconnection from her tribe as a whole, and Natlan as a whole, honestly. But honestly, I like it. Wild, reckless leader who takes no shit from anyone in a nation known for both war and extreme sports. I fuck with it. But I, too, am not a fan of the coochie zipper. I mean, I guess she could always bring the zippers down to a certain point where she can take it off like a normal bodysuit, but I don't see why she would need to completely unzip it. Like, that would be dumb. I'm sure by now you get the point, but now it's time to get into the real hot topic, the real meat and potatoes of this video, the immersion breaking technology. Another core reason as to why Natlan is the worst nation so far is because people seem to think that the technology that comes from Natlan breaks the fantasy setting that all the nations follow. When I first heard this take, I wholeheartedly felt like the fans were pulling it out of their ass, especially after we had walking robots and other exquisite machinery that didn't need to function with magical sources. Honestly, I didn't have this thought until a few days ago. Yet I've seen comments on Reddit Instagram, Twitter, and even TikTok saying that Natlan having its own energy source is an excuse. It's not an excuse for them to have their own technology that is far superior to anything else that we've seen in the game. This would be a decent argument if it weren't for the fact that Leela has adaptable energy and Fontaine has its own light-based energy that powers literally everything in the nation. Sumeru literally has the internet, each with different levels of engineering. Like, each nation has their different levels of engineering. And to dissect this, Cloud Retainer prides herself on her inventions. My personal favorite being the popcorn machine, because who wouldn't want a fucking popcorn machine that makes popcorn in less than like 3 seconds? My personal favorite being the popcorn machine. She has a whole host of inventions that allow her to simplify her daily living and make sure that everyone knows this specific fact about her. That said, she has a bike that she specifically made herself, an electric powered bike powered by electro energy that she has and has recorded crossing hundreds of miles in a day. You may be thinking, oh, that tells me how it's powered and not how she made it. And you're right. There's no guarantee that it's anything like Malika's motorcycle. There's no guarantee that it's anything like Malika's motorcycle, which breaks the fantasy immersion for so many players. Cloud Retainer made that bike from scratch, assumedly based on the concept of an actual bike. I'm going to assume that's on the concept of an actual bike because she calls it an electro-powered bike. If you're a Pokemon fan, thank the Rotom bike from Pokemon Sword and Shield. All of her inventions are powered by Adepto energy, by the way, in some form or fashion. Now, granted, it's powered by the Dendro Archon's Gnosis. The Akasha Terminal is essentially an integrated Bluetooth device that the academia students use to send and receive information as well as identify other individuals stored in its database. The Akasha system is a connection of many technologies, including the Akasha Terminal. Think of the Akasha Terminal as a telecommunication device and the Akasha system as the Google app that comes with every preloaded phone. It comes preloaded into the terminal. So far, we have the internet from Sumeru and electric bikes from Liyue. And up next, we have mechs that were created 500 years ago before it gets to the story by a Fontanian researcher and his group of scientists who wanted to find a way to harness the energy of Numia Osea by building stronger mechs that would withstand the violent energy that had been causing problems and left unchecked around Fontaine. Now, I don't know where the original blueprints from the mechs came from, but this scientist 500 years ago drew up blueprints for stronger mechs, and their advancement is being overseen by the Fontaine Research Institute. As far as technological advancements go, Fontaine is easily the most advanced we've seen, considering the flying machines, the mecha construction plan, the Fortress of Merope, the mecha, the firearms, and the cameras. I almost forgot that Fontaine made a way to make movies in a fantasy world. Taking pictures is one thing, but we have full-on movies in the world of Genshin Impact. Do you remember when movies first came out? Technically 1888, but since Fontainian movies are in color, I'm going to say 1916, when the first technical colored film came out. Making movies seems very modern to me, and not at all fantasy. And honestly, Fontaine being the most technologically advanced nation that it is, was like whiplash for me because I also still had this fantasy lens for Genshin despite the technology in Sumeru blasting me in the face every damn second. And it's not like Fontaine had this unobtainable level of technology either. This is very grounded and realistic outside of the mechs, obviously, which just keeps it within the realm of fantasy, if only by a hair. Now, apparently, the problem with Natlan's technology is that it's too modern. And I can see an argument for this, but the answer is very simple. The power source used to power all the gadgets and constructs in Natlan has given way to the if you can build it, phlogiston will power it mentality. Because it's just that strong. For instance, the 8-bit interface Kanich has is a projection from his bracelet that is powered by phlogiston. It's not that far-fetched to see something digitized like that, especially after seeing the interface of the Akasha terminal, which when it scans people, it brings up a whole digital image of the person and notes regarding that person. Shalonen having roller skates, I mean, roller skates aren't a technological advancement at all. No way. I mean, well, I wouldn't say at all, but it's not on the same level as everyone is putting it on. Shalonen having roller skates in a region inspired by Latin regions isn't out of place, considering Latin regions have expressed themselves through roller skating since the 1970s, making it a staple in their culture for a very long time. I fail to see how it's out of place for a game that has the internet, mechs, and electric bikes, and so on. It's okay to have giant robots walking around and attacking people in places where it doesn't mesh well within the region, but Lord forbid a person with roller skates pass you by. And I say this, and I know full-heartedly that the mechs, like the Ruin Guards, the Ruin Graders and everything, the reason that they're everywhere is because, the things that happened in Korea 500 years ago. I get that. But it makes zero sense to me. And the more it's explained to me about how Shalonen's roller skates are out of place in this game, the more it's explained to me, the more it sounds like more and more fans are looking for stuff to complain about. And on that topic of complaining, Malika's motorcycle and her design. I like Malika's design and her character. She's everything a leader should be. She inspires so much confidence in the people of Natlan, and in the end, even inspired Capitano to trust her, if reluctantly, of course. Her motorcycle, however, oh my goodness, did the fan base hate it. Some people loved the large bike, myself included, but others trashed it because it was another example of being too modern in a fantasy game. Or rather, the level of fantasy that Genshin presented itself with. Because I really don't understand how this motorcycle can break the immersion of a fantasy game when so many fantasy games have technology like that. So I'm assuming that the reason people are really upset is because the motorcycle being in the game breaks the level of fantasy that Genshin has presented itself with. That would be a better argument than just saying, "Oh, it breaks the immersion in this game because it's a fantasy game." Like that is a dumb argument to have. It is a horrible take. Throw it back wherever you got it from. Still to this day, people have no idea where she got the motorcycle from or how she came up with the blueprints to build it. And these are people who don't care to read the lore or character stories because it's clearly stated that Malika copied the blueprints by hand for the bike from an ancient race of dragons that were local to Natlan a long time ago. She then presented them to Shalonen, who made them after weeks of Malika pestering her. I think it's crazy that people keep going on and on, going after this damn motorcycle and these roller skates. It's really crazy. It explains itself in the character stories. On a serious note, though, after seeing what the cast asked Shalonen to make, I feel like Natlanese people are people who have never seen technology before in their life, and once they had it, they felt like the sky was the limit on what could be made. It's like if I just found out that water could be turned into ice. I want a whole house made out of ice. It's like you see how ridiculous that sounds. That's the type of shit that they were asking Shalonen to make when you go back into the character. So it's like, this shit is fucking ridiculous. Now, this is the part of the video where I have to talk about the story. I know, the story wasn't the best, but I liked it. So, let me go over these notes here. So if I have this correct, People don't like Natlan's story because it's a boring slog that has no weight and is led by a Mary Sue and Archon and has the lamest plot resolution and focuses too heavily on the power of friendship. Did I get that right? Sometimes I feel like this fandom plays through this game or these story quests with their eyes closed, or only through the perspective of other YouTubers. If you do either of these things, please stop. Please stop doing that. Those opinions are not your own, and to continue passing them off like they are is very annoying. Anyway, the nation of Natlan is a nation of war. And it was made abundantly clear when we arrived and learned about the tournament to determine who would take part in the Night Warden Wars. The Night Warden Wars is the answer to fighting back the Abyss, and only the worthy are capable of taking part. The process is basically to keep the Abyss suppressed, and people have been saying that the story doesn't hold any weight because what's the point of going in there and dying if they can be brought back with the Oath of Resurrection? And the simple answer is because they can do it again. It's a great honor in Natlan to be able to die for your nation, which many are willing to do as many times as it takes until the Abyss is defeated. They are doing this because it protects their homeland, and by being resurrected, they can do it again. There's a lot of exposition, and some of it is done incredibly incorrectly, like Capitano's sacrifice, and the fact that Mawika's sacrifice wouldn't amount to anything because the Abyss had a chance of coming back in the first place, and the Traveler being name-dropped as a descender with no pushback or questioning from anyone. But despite this, the story was amazing to me. We learned that Natlan's ley lines were incredibly weak after the incredibly technologically advanced Kingdom of Dragons was destroyed by the Pyro Dragon Sovereign, who was corrupted by the Abyss and thus unable to hold the memories of the nation or repel the Abyss. This was until the Lord of the Night came along and took the fragmented ley lines and weaved them into something that could bring secureness to the nation so that it wouldn't act as a portal for the Abyss to increase in activity. The Lord of the Night made the Night Kingdom out of the ley lines. Xbalanque made a deal with Renova, the Shade of Death, to reinforce the security of the Night Kingdom by claiming that he stole her powers of revival in exchange for a promise that Natlan would eventually triumph over the Abyss. Xbalanque basically coin flipped and won. He basically coin flipped and won. Like his luck stat, 100. He would then use this power to create the ancient names that the Wyabs would bestow upon a person within the respective tribe who embody the values and characteristics of the ancient name bearers in the times past. This is also the case for the Pyro Archon, which is why the title Archon is inherited along with all the memories of the previous Archons, including Xbalanque's deal with Renova. Xbalanque effectively made ancient name bearers walking, talking ley lines that would physically combat the Abyss, and because the flesh is weak in nature, the Oath of Resurrection is required so that they would come back after the Night Kingdom Wars concluded. Mawika knew that this couldn't continue forever, so she devised a plan to put an end to the Abyss's torment of Natlan once and for all. The reason they even have the tournament in the first place, like the beginning of it, but who determines who goes to the Night Kingdom? The reason they have that tournament is because they need to simulate battle that would keep the sacred flame lit so that they could use it for its revival purposes. Even those who aren't participating in the Night Warden Wars to stand against the Abyss are providing literal fuel to the country's safety. Like they act as gasoline for the fire. You know what I'm saying? Natlan doesn't look like a nation of war on the surface because the war takes place in the Night Kingdom. In the overworld, the citizens of Natlan are enjoying their lives and living day by day after chapter 1 and until the climax of chapter 5. The overworld of Natlan is not the battleground. As I mentioned earlier, Mawika knew the battle tournament battles to fuel the flame couldn't continue forever because eventually all flames die out. Natlan was living on borrowed time. Remember, the weaker the flame, the weaker the protections Natlan has. Like how it was before the Cataclysm, and then when the Cataclysm happened, it damn near extinguished the flame, which made things worse when it occurred. I mean, learning about why the ancient name bearers are required to take part in the pilgrimage holds a lot of fucking weight, if you ask me. Like, I genuinely think people were playing with Natlan through their eyes closed. You cannot sit here and tell me that this nation's story doesn't hold any weight or doesn't hold any heavy weight on the overarching plot. For a long time, I just didn't agree with Marika being a Mary Sue because she just doesn't feel like one to me. I still feel like she's not as perfect as everyone claims that she is, or maybe she's even more so than people realize. And I don't think she's a boring character at all. Her story talks about how she's the best at everything she does and puts her mind to, and even in the Archon quest, all of her plans just fall into place seemingly without fail. I can see the argument for Rena, who isn't human, having to be someone of great authority, losing her mind over the course of 500 years because the pressure is getting to her, being a counter to the argument of Mawika, who is a human, being perfectly fine, emotionally intact, mentally intact, highly functioning. I see that and I get it, which is and I understand that's why people are calling her a Mary Sue because it's like, oh, she has no inner turmoil. She's not breaking down. She's not succumbing to emotions. Like 500 years of this is not taking a toll on her. She's too perfect. Honestly, her being too perfect is the definition of a Mary Sue. Okay, but is her being that such a bad thing when the problems of the nation require her to be that? Malvika is a person to me who comes across as a person who bottles up their emotion for the sake of accomplishing her goals no matter what. And we see that when she goes back, when she meets her sister a second time. Because everyone's like, oh, I would go back in time so I could be with my sister. Well, Malvika didn't do that for reasons that are explained in the game. She even has Seat Lally look up information regarding her sister or her family at all on daily basis, like all the time. She has her look that stuff up all the time. That's a person who is deeply worried about their family. That is her inner turmoil. The fact that she had to leave her family to become the Archon of the future. That's her inner turmoil. But her bottling up her emotions to get what needs to be done at any cost, that creates a problem. That creates a problem because now that she's able to masterfully do this, she becomes way too comfortable with sacrificing her people to solve the nation's issue, and it doesn't make it any better that the endless fodder of Natlan are willing to do this for her no matter what. Malika is perfect, but she's so perfect that she ends up creating her own problems that add to the overarching terror of Natlan. And I hear people say, anyone could have done what Malika did. My gamer in Genshin, they quite literally could not have. She was chosen for a reason by her ancient name, because she embodies all the traits of the Archon. Like, I'll never understand why people wanted to side with Capitano so badly. His way would have destroyed Natlan and everything it ever was. He wanted to take the Gnosis, Malika's ancient name, and create new rules for Natlan so that he could save the nation. Keep in mind, this motherfucker was not even from the fucking country. All right. Quick question. What is it called when a foreign power comes into your country and erases everything of cultural significance? If you said genocide, you get a cookie. If you said colonialism, you get 2 cookies. Because one of the things Natlan is inspired by is pre-colonial Latin countries. I was emotionally invested in Natlan's story because I felt as though the Traveler was directly involved with all the quests, which was a refreshing change of pace compared to Fontaine, considering we were absent for most of Chapter 5 of that quest line. My choices and actions directly affected how many people died during the war, and seeing the deceased laid out all over Natlan was a heavy sight that I still think about. The horrors that the Abyss were capable of doing just a few hours over Natlan, it would have been amplified substantially if we had failed. And I don't like this whole power of friendship cope for the not liking the story either. Like, we know Malika left the blueprints for the next Archon to unite the tribes, and then for the Wyatt to choose the heroes that would stand with her after each Wyatt, successfully recovered. Alongside Malwika, these heroes would eliminate the abyss in the nation in Natlan forever. Everyone in Natlan is united because their culture is about honoring the fallen and carrying on the legacies and traditions of those who came before. It's expressed in their graffiti, their tapestries, and all their other art forms. Like, this is just another reason why Capitano's way was just dumb as hell. He wanted to completely erase all of that when the whole point of Natlan's story was to preserve heritage, culture, history, and the way of life where the ultimate honor is being remembered for generations after you've passed. This only adds weight to the story as a whole when you read about the pain and the anguish that the Pyro Archons experienced after Malwika left through time. Malwika knows that pain and has those memories because they are all tied to her ancient name. She has all the memories of the past Pyro Archons. The power of unity is the theme of Natlan, and Malwika symbolizes that. She carries the weight of her people's sacrifice and the sacrifices of those who shared her ancient name. She doesn't need any character development because her character is supposed to be the culmination of everyone's efforts. She is supposed to be the perfect answer to millennia of suffering and pain that Natlan was forced to experience. She is the beacon of Natlan, and for the plan to work, the tribes need to give her all. The tribes need to give their all to support her. It's a far cry from Fontaine's story, where all of Fontaine was against Farina, who was effectively just a placeholder or a linchpin. But that too was a part of a greater plan to save the nation. So in Farina's favor, she did have her own personality and was separate. It was a separate entity. She was a separate entity. So she was never meant to embody her nation because she wasn't even really the Archon in the first place. So if you were to tell me that as an argument or a counterpoint to Malwika's character, I would understand and I would concede to that point. Absolutely. I will say that a plot point that was like super divisive was making the Traveler an ancient name because an Outlander had never had one, and Malwika basically coin flipped on whether or not it would be possible. This didn't stick well with me, considering a lot of menial quests had to be shoehorned in so that the Traveler could get enough renown to even qualify for an ancient name. Because without it, Shalonen wouldn't have any material to work with, and during the forging process, I just really feel that it was just a way to progress through the nation while feeling important. It was made more needlessly complicated when learning that the Wyatt will not record the actions of an Outlander, which makes sense, but then you remember that the Traveler is a descender, so his deeds won't be in any way recorded in any ley line anywhere in Teyvat. Like, the premise was good, but I'm not a big fan of the execution in this particular part of the plot. I also hate how Capitano was a deus ex machina for the plot resolution so that Malwika could, stay with her people and enjoy the fruits of her labor. Like, I get that he wanted to be put to rest so that he didn't have to suffer anymore, but dude, I really think Malwika should have died. I will not elaborate on that. Malwika should have died, point blank, period. Again, I still think that a lot of criticisms people have about Natlan are very nitpicky and incredibly baseless, but I have learned that these criticisms come from people who do not pay attention to the story or the surroundings at all. I'm so tired of seeing comments about Natlan's technology having no origin. It just appears and only playable characters have it, while their tribesmen are stuck in the Stone Age because it's just not really true. Like, the character design of Malwika truly doesn't give me an Archon vibe, and so that critique of her character, on top of not liking the motorcycle, they're valid. They're very valid. But the slandering of her character and making up blatant lies about the nation of Natlan to support your claims is not the way to convey that. Another thing that I keep seeing people say is that Natlan doesn't feel like a nation enveloped in war. Everyone seems too happy and they aren't acting as if they're in a state of war. Which, true, but I could say the same thing about Inazuma and Fontaine. The appearance and the way that people were acting in both of these nations didn't convey to me that they were nations in trouble. In Inazuma, every NPC blindly followed the laws of their Archon and lived relatively peaceful lives. In Fontaine, The daily lives of everyone were in full swing when the whole time they were in immense danger from the time we had set foot in the nation. I also don't understand the argument that Malika doesn't feel like an Archon because everyone disrespects her. Disagreeing with someone is not disrespecting them. Questioning their logic and reasoning isn't disrespectful. That makes Malika sound like a narcissistic parent. Keep in mind, Malika says that she does say some really off the wall shit when she explains her plan thoroughly. Like, I raised a few eyebrows whenever I was listening to her talk about her plan to defeat the Abyss. Like, it sounded like straight bullshit, but enough results were produced. Like, the results produced themselves because of her, so I just couldn't bring myself to disagree with her. Lastly, another critique I see about Natlan is the technology, and that Natlan is not a nation. Natlan is not a nation that was super technologically advanced with its tech lost to the wind because of war. The only reason that it has its technology is to sell its fan service characters. Like that's what people are saying. To that I have to say, please throw that take back wherever you found it. The technology comes from the same place the technology advanced enemies come from. The ancient race of dragons that we learn about when we're exploring Ochka Natlan. Malika talks about scouring the nation for technology and material that Shalona can reverse engineer to construct her motorcycle. I want to see the quest list of the people presenting some of these takes. I really do, because I know y'all haven't done a world quest since Leeway. Finally, I want to address my personal concerns with the story. I'm disappointed with the ending and how it started out. I really thought we would be following Eon-san and the Collective of Plenty. Like, the exploration and everything is fine, but I would have loved to follow a story where Eon-san is taking part in the tournament to become the Pyro Archon, and then we find out Malika stole the Gnosis from the former Archon years ago by assassinating them, which then sparks a civil war. Once the information comes out to the public, with all the tribes except the people of the Springs and the Science of the Canopy siding with Malika to put an end to it. This takes place within like the first 3 chapters. Then we confront Malika alongside Eon-san, and we find out in chapter 4 that the Archon Malika killed had been manipulated by Gosoithoth in the form of the Pyro Dragon Sovereign, and that the reason she did it was because the previous Archon sacrificed her sister. At the beginning of chapter 5, Malika reveals the truth of the past of the people of Natlan before the nation is attacked by Gosoithoth in the form of the Pyro Dragon. The spirits of the previous Pyro Archons stand before Eon-san and give her the ancient name and the Gnosis, where she then confronts Gosoithoth with the Traveler in the Abyss. Yada yada yada. Eon-san feels that the nation should be ruled by the people and not by a figure with godlike power. And while technically she is still the Archon, Eon-san would give the Gnosis to the Traveler, and then that would lead into the Shnesnaya storyline. Like, did I like the story? Yeah, it was pretty good, but some of the things just did not land at all. And were there off-putting things within the character designs? Yes. Chaska and Ororon for sure, but they definitely still represent their tribes when you look closely. Natlan isn't finished, and unfortunately we won't be going directly to the Land of Eternal Winter this year. But I still have high hopes for the future of Genshin and the characters that come after. I low-key still remember how much the community trashed Sumeru when it continued, and praised Fontaine despite the story not being as good as Sumeru's, in my opinion. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not gonna blame an entire community for the goofiness of the vocal minority who spend every single patch talking about how much the game has gone down the toilet. By all means, complain and critique. This game is not perfect in any way, but at least have all the facts before you start being a goofy on the internet. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion, Natlan wasn't what I thought it would be, and based on what we got, that's okay. It's an okay chapter into that. I just feel like it had so much against it, and every patch just dug a deeper hole for people to pile dirt on it. I just hope that once everything gets straightened out, that they pay the English voice actors to voice the missing content. Also, who else is with me when I say that they need to add an option to rewatch the cutscenes? Like, wouldn't that be fucking amazing? I also want to take this time to let everyone know that I'm holding a small contest. Um, in the link in the description, I will be putting a form so that you guys can submit videos of your the highest amount of damage you've ever done in Genshin Impact, and I will review them and go over them on stream. And whoever wins gets a free Woken Moon sent to their account. Good luck, everyone. And yeah, that's about the meat and potatoes. See ya.